As the Empire begins to expand its power and a team of clones tries to find their place in the galaxy, the Sky Guys are back to preview Season 2 of The Bad Batch.
All right, we are back here on the Sky Guys, final podcast of 2022 as we're getting ready to kick off 2023 in style with a brand new season of Star Wars, The Bad Batch, Season 2, long awaited, delayed several times, Season 2. Finally coming out for premiere next week. We're going to re-rack the preview here. Joining us today, first out, the man who's voicing the narration every single week, Pete Consadori is here. Pete, how are you?
Doing well. We're finally getting to this show, right? I mean, this is, like you said, multiple delays. But excited to talk about it. I can't believe we're at the end of the year already. So obviously always happy to be here talking Star Wars with you fellas.
Yeah, and as you mentioned here, Pete, I feel like we did this preview in August. Nick and I did. You weren't here. Maybe the Star Wars God said, Pete has to be here before we release the show.
You know, it's a possibility. I think maybe Disney had the inside scoop that I wasn't around. I appreciate Disney. Thank you. Hopefully it was for the better. This delay. We won't know until the show actually airs and we see what's going on. But yeah, you might be right. They may have went in my favor there.
It absolutely did. Also with me today, we talked about this Bad Batch preview back in August. Now we have a little more information. Nick Fraietta is here as I would call him the leader of our missions. Nick, how are you?
Doing great. It's about time we are doing this. It's good. Yeah, like a couple weeks to go here. Not even. The time of release here, I think we only got about a week, right?
Yeah, so inside podcast here, we're recording this one at the same time we're doing the holiday special podcast. So this is why I still have the Book of Boba Fett holiday sweater on here. So we're recording it on the 14th. This is going to be out in your feeds the 28th. The episode is going to be out next week. So this is why we're not going
to a week from today, a week at the time of release, coming out about time, and I'm ready for it. I'm excited to watch. I think that it's a good time. I actually think it's a good time for it. I think I don't know if you guys agree. I think the winter is a better time for the shows than the summer, in my opinion, because in the summer I got a lot going on, this and that. And in the winter, I kind of just want to watch something. So for me, I'm more excited about it.
Yeah, you don't have to go outside, like go to the beach or go play softball. You're like, it's cold. I'm going to be inside. I'll watch TV.
Right.
Yeah. All right. As always here, Pete, people want to follow us here on the Sky Guys, especially for Bad Batch. It's not going to be in the Just and Suffering feed. Feel free to subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, all the usual suspects. Simply search for search for the Sky Guys there. Find all of our podcasts here, all the off-season stuff, all the Bad Batch stuff's going to be there. No Just on the Suffering for that.
Yeah, I mean, the exclusivity of this feed is pretty up there. I mean, Spotify is a great one. All of them are great to be listening in on those platforms. So definitely subscribe. Get that content as quickly as you can so that you're not behind when the show comes out.
Absolutely here. And Nick, if people want to follow us on the Instagram streets, how do they do that?
They can follow at Sky Guys Podcast on Instagram, and you will find us right there.
You can find us right there. And I'll also point out here that by next week in the podcast here, we will have a Sky Guys Twitter account up here. So I will share that information next week. So we'll have another social media platform to follow as Bad Batch gets us started.
Awesome.
Us here. And you also follow the YouTube page, Mike Phillips on YouTube, Video versus Conversations are here. And I don't know which character to pull up here for who might show up here in this one. So Pete, I'm going to throw a big guess here. I think we will get an Ahsoka appearance in Season 2 of Bad Batch.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like they're really driving Ahsoka to the ground. I say, just everywhere you look, it's just Ahsoka this, Ahsoka that. I mean, I don't want to say it makes sense, but we have the return of Rex, right, from Season 1. It was Captain Rex, right? Season 1?
Captain Rex got up.
Sorry, it's been such a long time. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense that we're going to have probably even a mention of Ahsoka a couple times, maybe even a cameo, if you will, in animated avenues. I'm at the point where I'm just waiting for the Ahsoka show. I don't need to keep seeing Ahsoka in different shows.
And we're still 2 shows away. She could probably show up at least one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Mandalorian might be the more likely candidate to have an Ahsoka Tano cameo, but I could be wrong. Could be both.
Could be both here. And Nick, this is usually where we do the Star Wars news here, but since we are recording in advance, we have no idea what the news will be. I think we're going to skip the news and go right into the topics here.
Yeah, I just have a prediction for the news. Big news is that Kathleen Kennedy was fired. No, I have no idea. We'll see.
Yeah, we're not gonna no New Year's resolutions yet for Star Wars either. So
Yeah, we have no idea what the news will be, but perhaps there's big news out there, and if there is,
we'll discuss it
it's
next week.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll discuss it on January 4th. We'll catch up whatever news we not get to between the 14th and now. And with that, let's get into a little bit of the Bad Batch here. So, Nick, as the proper historian of this podcast, give me the quick, like, 2-minute version of what happened in season 1 of Bad Batch.
The quickest version I can think of is we have, let's see, how many are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. I got five. 5 clones who were a little genetically altered to be superior, if you will. They showed up in season 7 of the Clone Wars. And when we meet them a little bit during the Clone Wars, and then when this show takes place a little after the Clone Wars, it takes place like, or I guess during the end, it's Order 66. And they kind of fight their way through it, all of them except one. They kind of go off on their own and become rogue clones, and they meet a other clone who is a non-altered clone, similar to Boba Fett, but this one's name is Omega, and is a she clone, female, and they kind of go around the galaxy and solving crimes, doing missions, almost like a little like weekly solve the crime show kind of thing. And they have that one who's not with them, the one who
Well,
his name is. Well, you want to get into more detail later? You mean? Or
we go now. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you probably at least heard of season 1.
yeah, so one of them, the guy, his name is Crosshair. He didn't follow them, so you got 5 rogue clones. Or 4 rogue clones essentially with Omega, and you have another one who's at the Empire, and they battle it out all season. And at the end of the season, the Empire goes boom on Camino and blows the whole thing up. And that's pretty much where we leave you.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we leave it here. And Pete, one more note I'll add here is that at the end of the season, Crosshair has been hunting them all year. He finally shows up on Camino with them, and then he sort of finds out that he resents them for leaving him behind, and then sort of realizes that, like, my inhibitor chip, we thought was the reason why he stayed with the Empire, is like he had removed a long time ago. He's just choosing to stay with the Empire of his own free will. So they'll throw that in there.
Yeah, that was a nice little twist. I think, the entire show, we're probably thinking, hey, this is the inhibitor chip. Maybe they're going to try to save him from this kind of way of thinking. But it's a nice little twist that kind of at least makes you show that Crosshair chose his side. And he's not being forced like a robot, if you will. Still, obviously, he chose the wrong side, because we know later in the movies that the Empire does fall. But it was definitely an interesting twist for the season, and I didn't hate it.
Yeah, in season 1, a lot of the thing, I felt like they were sort of wasting some time with this show. There was a lot of like, they need money. They meet up with Sid, who was one of Echo's contacts during the Clone Wars day. She had meet her during Clone Wars, meet her here. She's going to say, oh, like, go do this job for me. I'll give you some credits. And they basically just collecting credits, and they run into people on the way. I feel like that's pretty absent for a lot of the episodes, Nick. Yeah, so that's going on here. I do think that this is a format thing. I think I wonder if we're going to see more of this and less of this in season 2, because Nick, I don't know if you saw this, but like I've seen online some critics who said apparently they've gotten screeners for Bad Batch. They've gotten 14 of the 16 episodes already somehow in the screener. And apparently they've said that this really combines like the best parts of Clone Wars in season 2. So hopefully there's room for improvement here.
That's great. And that's what I expect with a season 2. Always think it's a good idea to have, season 1 be a little bit of an intro, go around, meet some people, do some jobs. Kind of seems like Mando did that too, right?
Yep.
And then season 2 is when you do what you want to do. Now you have the audience on board. Now we can have some fun. Introduce some characters. You don't have to introduce characters. You could, but introduce characters that we know and love already, and mix them in with the people that we are just meeting, and you'll start to really see what this show's all about. Like, I really don't know, what is this show about. Like, I know what it's about, but what's the goal? Like, what is their goal right now?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't really know, and we can go a number of ways.
Yeah, P, it feels like the meta goal of this show is sort of Dave Filoni wanted to continue Clone Wars in some way, and this is sort of the way they went about it. It's following these rogue clones, teaming the Clone Wars story style. But like Nick's point is right. It's like, do we know why we're following these guys around?
Yeah, I mean the end game is really not that clear, and I would argue that maybe in the Mandalorian the end game is not totally clear either. We understand what happens in each season, we understand why it happens, but what is the Mandalorian trying to do bigger picture, right? If you really try to think about it, obviously now that we're going into the fourth season, we have a better understanding of that. But after season one, we only knew one thing: protect the child, right? We didn't know what the greater message of the show would be. So, I agree with you. I think this is an attempt to just keep the Clone Wars alive. And if done right, it's going to be a nice little touch. But I can't see it going like 7 seasons like the Clone Wars did, though. I feel like we've been, it's almost like oversaturated of clones and even this time era in Star Wars.
Yeah, I would agree with that here. Let's talk a little bit about some of these trailers here. We got one back in, I think, May for season 2. We got a celebration, and then we got another one, I think, a couple of weeks ago here, and we've seen both of these here. So, Pete, any takeaways in the trailers? No, you didn't get to comment on the first one, at least. Anything that popped out of these 2 trailers?
I don't know how you guys felt, but I don't know if I really got a vibe of how the season's going to be, other than Omega is a fully functional part of the group now. I feel like in season 1, Omega was like oh, you're the kid, we need to protect you, don't actually do work. And then toward like the end, she's doing more and more to protect herself and also to protect the team. I feel like now she's just part of the team. That's what it kind of looks like to me. The second trailer starts off with this kind of like silly scene where like, was it like a bunch of crabs are chasing them? I hope that they get this out of the way in the very beginning as like a reintroduction of the team. Get it out of the way in the beginning of the season. I don't want to see this toward the end or in the middle where things are supposed to be happening. But other than that, it's kind of like, I know the people, I know the characters, excuse me, and I just don't know what's gonna happen in the season from what I'm seeing. There's a lot of, to me, just a lot of questions that I have.
Yeah, and Nick, I feel like the one thing that sort of like was touched on both trailers here is like, oh, like we're still trying to figure out what we're doing here. We get like just more of like, oh, here's more people we're meeting here. Like we get a lot of Commander Cody the second trailer in terms of like what he's up to. We get Gungi, the Wookiee youngling who like is like survived Order 66. Apparently another one on the board, Nick.
What? Oh, another person, Order 66, you mean?
Yep, another one.
Oh yeah, yeah. Listen, it's getting a little old here, but I think that crab scene will be the first scene in the entire show.
Yeah,
I really do. It looks like a scene with like no context, and they're just jumping into it and running. But I noticed from I rewatched the trailers before we hopped on here to give myself a little refresher. They're only 2 minutes, so it didn't take very long. But a lot of the shots from the second trailer are from the first trailer. I did not realize that until I watched them back to back. Like half of that second trailer is taken from the first trailer. So we don't have, it's really only 2 minutes total of content that we have. So we really don't have a lot here.
Yeah, they're hiding stuff from us. They're trying to be very coy on what they're showing.
Really, really quick. Were these teaser trailers or official trailers?
I think the teaser, one official.
Yeah, I think the second one's the official one.
Got it.
And like half of that official one is the teaser trailer.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I do think that's interesting for sure.
The Wookiee, Palpatine, the crabs were in the first one. I didn't realize that. Did you realize that?
Briefly. Yep.
Yeah. I don't think Rex was in the first one.
I think he was. I remember he
was
the line saying like, "Oh, like you guys up for a mission?" They're like, "Yeah."
I thought that was only the second one. Am I wrong?
No, Rex is definitely in the first one. I remember that.
Oh, so then I can't think of really many things that are only in the second one.
They expanded Cody a little more because really look at Cody's face in the first one. The second one, you actually get a little bit of what he's up to, how he's working with Crosshair.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So
that's like the only scene from that trailer, that little 4-second thing that I have any takeaway of is Cody with Crosshair.
Yeah. So let's talk a little about here for 2 things here. First, number 1, the release strategy here, because we talked about this numerous times here on this podcast. We talked about, hey, like season 1, like was, it's all its own thing in 2020. I think it was 2021, like when we were killing the time between Mando and Boba Fett. They did 2 premiere. Doesn't premiere 1 a week the rest of the way. Didn't get a ton of buzz. This time feels like they're trying to rush it through. We got a 2-episode premiere, got 7 and 8 together. The finale is together, 15 and 16. Then they are running straight through, all through from January until April. I think in March, right through in the back 6 episodes are going to overlap with Mandalorian here. So that's a little bit, but Nick, a little more time to sit on it. Does this bother you? Are you excited about this? What do you think?
So it doesn't matter to me personally because I'm going to watch it regardless. But I think it's a good idea. And I thought it was a bad idea when I first heard it. I'm like, why would you run back Commando? But I really think it's as simple as When Mando's there, people are getting on the platform. And when you have them on the platform already, what they decide to do is up in the air. But if they're not on the platform, they're not going to watch it, obviously. And it just seems like a no-brainer to it's Wednesdays, and we know Mando will be the same. So let's say it's March 1st, and you pop on that first episode of Mando, and it's 8 p.m. at night, and unfortunately, the episode's not as long as we want them to be. It ends up being only 35 minutes, which is unfortunate. We all wish it would be 50 every week, but it's 8:35, and it says check out the Bad Batch, and it pops up in your corner, and you're like, I mean, what? I got 20 minutes. Let me see what this is about. Otherwise, I don't think people are even going to turn it on. So I think it's a better solution to the problem instead of just putting it on its own, because if it fails again, then what's the point of the show?
Yeah, Pete, my counter to that would be this is like, I see Nick's logic, but at this point, like, would it make more sense if you're doing that to sort of start it towards the end of Mando, where maybe like, you're 5 weeks into Mando. Oh, here's the Bad Batch premiere. You get people starting to watch it. Whereas if you come in now, it's like, I missed the first episodes. I got to watch 10 episodes to understand what's going on here. They just don't pick it up.
I get what you're saying. To me, if it was me who was just getting onto the show and saying, "Oh, Bad Batch, there's a season and a half already. Like never knew about the show. It looks interesting. Let me start with season 1. And I have something to binge while I'm waiting for the new Mandalorian episode to come out." I think, like Nick, I didn't think it was a good idea, but I don't think it can hurt them, because I think the people that want to watch Bad Batch are going to watch Bad Batch anyway. I don't think anyone's saying, well, because Mandalorian's releasing on the same day as Bad Batch, I'm not watching it. I don't think that's the case. Maybe they're not watching it on the same day, but they're still going to watch it if they're interested. I think this is only going, like you said, going to show, or as Nick was saying, going to show if this show is actually going to be worth making a season 3, a season 4. Because if people are getting on the platform for Mandalorian and they're not checking out other shows that didn't do well, let's say Boba Fett, when that season 2 comes out, or Bad Batch, then they'll say, okay, look, I mean, they're already there. They're not clicking on it. There's no point. So I think this can only be a positive in both scenarios, where it's a positive that you may get more viewership, or it's a positive to say, okay, we're done with this. We're not going to keep moving on past, let's say, season 3, if they want to wrap up a story or something like that. And that's the end of it.
So basically saying it's sort of like, like the idea of NBC, let's throw something on behind Friends. If people watch it, great. If they don't, we know it sucks.
I think if you want to watch the show, especially because it's at your fingertips, it's not like a TV show where you have to, it's not like a on television show on cable, whatever, where you have to wait for a specific time and watch it and not get distracted. Because it's at their fingertips, I think people that want to watch Bad Batch are going to watch Bad Batch regardless if it's running concurrently with Mandalorian. I think this can only increase the foot traffic or the viewership, if you will, of the Bad Batch. Even if you have to start at season 1, they're quick episodes, and someone will say, well, I got an extra, like Nick was saying, I got an extra 20 minutes. Let me start it. Let me see if I like it, because it's coming up on the card at the end saying, hey, you may like this, and you didn't know about it. I don't think it's deterring fans like us or fans that just want Bad Batch. I don't think anyone's saying, well, because Mandalorian started, I'm just going to stop watching Bad Batch. I don't need it. It's that hour is going to take up too much of my time. So
it's got to show up on the card, though. If it doesn't show up on the card,
I was about to say that. I was about to say that, because like we'll learn a lot about how to view the show. Because if it's not on the card, they're saying, "Oh, go back and watch Andor." Like that'll tell you that. They'll tell you a lot.
Well, I'll tell you this: I don't know if the card is algorithm based or it's automated by Disney to say what should actually show up after, let's say, Andor or whatever. But I will say this: if Disney doesn't do that, it makes zero sense to run it concurrently, right? So if we see when Mandalorian comes out and we're watching the first episode and that card doesn't show up as Bad Batch, there is zero planning by Disney to say, hey, we want to get more viewership of Bad Batch. It just is not a good idea.
Nick,
you also have that. Sorry, Mike. You also have that top section when you get on Disney Plus, which shows you like new episode of Andor, right?
Oh, the banner,
right? If the first, which it's gonna be, like, let's get real. If the first thing there is Mando and the second thing there is Bad Batch on Wednesdays, people aren't gonna get to the second thing. They're gonna hit the first one and they're not gonna bother. If you switch it, put Bad Batch first, and then make them scroll over to Mando, that they might see it and think about it. If they don't see it, they're not thinking about it.
I don't think the banner is the thing. I think the card is probably the better thing, because you already have them there.
Both.
I mean, people want to see Mando. Click Mando. They're not going to go scroll and see, oh, what else does Disney Plus have today? They're not going to say what Marvel thing they have. They're here for Mandalorian. They can watch Mandalorian. But I'm saying it's like, during Rogue One, like during Andor, was the car you got at the end usually Rogue One in terms of like what to watch next?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah,
I mean, that makes it more on the side of they're planning on what goes on that card. It's not just algorithm based.
Yeah.
I have to. I'll repeat this.
Even if it is algorithm based, if you're watching Mando and you're watching it consistently, more likely than not,
you're probably gonna get Boba Fett.
You're
Not gonna get Bad Batch.
But you're going to get something Star Wars related.
Oh, yeah,
you don't think it would be?
Yeah,
you probably get the Book of Boba Fett then if they're doing it algorithm based. Because say, oh, this live action Mando's in this show. You would like this show.
Yeah.
Unless the algorithm is smart enough to know they watch Star Wars, recommend the other new Star Wars show.
Yeah. That's the other thing I see programmed in, but I think that's above our pay grade how that works.
Well, if anyone from Disney is listening, please put it in the card, or else no one's going to watch this.
Yeah, not during Mando. Definitely not. And speaking of here, in terms of season 1, I mean, we go back to this a little bit. We talked about season 1 a little bit. We agreed, very uneven, very sort of, up and down. We had some great episodes. The episodes were like, what the hell are we doing here? Pete, what do you want to see them improve for season 2? Because based on like what I've heard from the critics who've seen the screeners, it seems like they really ticked it off. So what are you hoping to see them change?
Well, I think season 1 was a perfect example of what was the downfall of the Clone Wars, where you just had arcs that made no difference to the storyline that was wrapped around these characters, right? I don't want to see 85 different bounty hunter missions. I don't want to see that anymore. We got it. Like, they're for hire. They're not working for sustainable income, food, whatever from the Empire. So I got that. We need to move away from that. I think that's the first key step. And the second key step is make the arcs, if you move away from that, at least mean something. Make them entertaining, even if you have to do it in 3 or 4 episode arcs, almost like what Andor did, or even what the Clone Wars did. I think that's going to make this season more meaningful. And yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I could think of doing it better. And like, maybe just don't like overfill it with cameos since it's season 2. Maybe try their best to like have some, but not like every other scene kind of a thing. But other than that, those are my critiques for what needs to be done.
Yeah, Nick, like anything you want to add before I throw my point in?
Just simply less duds. There's 16 episodes. I believe there were 16 last season too, right?
Yep.
Of the 16 last season, probably 11 of them sucked.
Yeah, the only ones I could think of that were good was the premiere was good. I think the 2 episodes of Rex were good. I think the finale was good.
Yeah, flip that around. Make it so if instead of having 11 bad ones, give us 11 good ones. Like a 5-11 team in football finishing 11-5. Big difference, right, Mike?
Yep, certainly is. I'll say my big thing I feel like here is like we need to give these guys separate personalities, especially like we talked about this last season when we covered the show. It's like, oh, like what's the difference between Echo and Tech? They're the same person, just having different lines. Like there was episode last season, I think I forget which number it was. Like there was an episode where we saw young Hera. We followed her storyline for an entire episode. And the Bad Batch ran for 5 minutes, for like literally 30 seconds. They ran for 2 scenes. I think one where they drop off weapons. Omega talks to young Hera and they leave. And that was a great episode without them. It's like you need them to actually have personalities you can care about, as opposed to just being a vehicle to get to the cameos that Filoni wants to see.
I think they're not going to. It's too late now. We're on season 2. But if Echo and Tech were combined into one character and it was just Echo, then the show would be a lot better. It'd be a lot easier to follow, knowing there's 3 instead of 4 of them. It's just so much easier to follow because there'd be such differing personalities in all of them. The leader, the muscle, the brains.
Yep.
Done. Instead, we have leader, muscle, veteran, brains, but they're kind of the same thing. Yep. It doesn't really make any sense. Just combine. Too late now, obviously, but I think it would make the show infinitely better, infinitely easier to identify with the characters.
Yeah, and PJ, I think also part of the problem with that group was I think they took Crosshair Abbott was the most defined character of the group, and we're like, he would have had some friction with them in terms of direction they were going, but like the fact he decided to stay behind and to stick with the Empire here, like the 4 of them were sort of basically on the same page, and they were just like basically raising a kid. It's like taking Omega with them on all these trips and whatnot. But like, I think Crosshair would have added a little sandpaper to that group that really needed it.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get a lot of Crosshair this season. I think more than we had last season, especially with that last couple episodes of the arc in season 1. I will make this point, and I might be just taking this too literal. They are clones, even though they are the Bad Batch and they were enhanced and they weren't exactly what they're supposed to be. They are clones and they are going to have similar personalities. And I think you had to do it one of two ways. You either do everyone where they have completely different personalities and they just happen to look alike and they have their impressive skills, or you make them all very similar with their different skills. And I think you can't have both. And I think that's why this clashes, right? And when we watch the Clone Wars, almost all of the clones, because they're clones that didn't really have, except for like Rex and Cody, they all sounded the same. They all acted the same. It was all the same, for lack of better words, all the same crap, right? It was all the same lines. It was all we expected it to be. So I understand why those two are very similar, Tech and Echo. However, I do agree with Nick where we need to have some sort of defining moments or defining personalities because these are the main characters that we're following around a lot.
Yeah, certainly is here. And I think one thing I think would help the show is like if we, sort of cut back on reliance of a cameo every episode, basically, and sort of let these guys be the stars. So we introduce some new characters and interact with. Because Nick, do you remember last season we sort of kept track of how many like cameos we had from like other properties?
Yes, I do.
We had 26 in 16 episodes. That's a scene pace.
I don't mind having a lot of cameos. I think we just need to have them be important and not just for the sake of having cameos.
Yeah, for example, here, like, I mean, I'll read some of the names out here. Obviously, we had Saw Gerrera, Bib Fortuna, Fennec twice, Cad Bane twice, Rex. Then we're going to some of these, like, really, like, thin ones. Like, Gregor shows up for an episode. The Martez sisters show up for an episode. AZ-13, the droid who helps, like, Fives, shows up for 2 episodes. Like, these are things that, like, we don't need them every single week.
Right. I definitely agree.
It's now since we're on the topic of the characters here, we know there's gonna be a lot of characters showing up here, so we're not going to draft it because this would be insanity trying to draft a cartoon in terms of who could show up because Lily's just animating them and giving them a voice here. So aside from the ones in the trailer here, Nick, give me some guys who you think guys and gals think could show up in this show.
I think Ahsoka. I think Sly Moore because they're deliberately leaving her out of the trailers where she should be there.
Bosk,
of course, Bosk, and maybe like one of the Empire guys. I mean, we had Tarkin last season, but maybe like Krennic.
Do we get a Darth Vader sighting this season, do you think?
You definitely, I mean, like you said, anyone possible. Like, maybe, like, I'm not, I don't think there's any character that you could say that I'd be like, no way. Like, I think we can get Chewbacca. Like, I would not opposed to that at all. I don't think anyone is like a no way.
Anyone's pop out to you in terms of like who you think could show up?
I mean, I would say Boba Fett, right? I mean, this is the main brother of Omega, right? And he didn't show up in season 1. Has been confirmed that he's showing up in season 2, right? I'm not mistaken on that. So that's the only one. I mean, maybe like a Han and Chewie kind of a situation, but actually, no, they don't meet up at that point. That's too early, so that wouldn't be the case.
You can get separate.
But you might get separate, right? But I mean, other than that, it's hard to justify any other cameos. Let's just put it that way. You could put anyone in there, right? Like Nick said, but to justify their cameos, it's just kind of hard to pick and choose. There's only like a few that I could think of why they would be there, right? Bosk, Boba Fett, Sly Moore, but everyone else, like, well, what do they need to be in it for, right?
I'll throw Maul in the pile too. I mean, especially if they're going in the underworld section, I'd say Maul and Hondo are also prime candidates because Hondo's not appeared in something in a long time, and he's animated. This is the perfect spot to see him again because they run into him when they're like running a job somewhere.
So I want to know when. I want to know when you guys think this will happen and who. When Disney decides to throw in their first cameo of a newly created character in the show. For example, when we see, let's say it's Roken in a show, when we see Luthen in something else as a cameo appearance, when do you think that happens and who do you think it is?
In terms of this show?
If it's not this show, another show, like when do you think that's going to happen?
I think I would say my guess would be probably Ahsoka for like some of these characters.
No, I mean like a new character.
They did already.
Oh, you mean the Ahsoka show?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they did. I mean, Pete's right. They did with Fennec in season 1 of.
That's true. Yeah.
They also did with the Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
technically Book of Boba Fett was not Mandalorian show, and he had
That's true.
the best arc of the whole show, but they took him and Grogu, and those were brand new characters, and threw him in Book of Boba Fett. So technically,
Yeah, that's true.
Really happened.
All right, let me rephrase the question. What do you think the next one they'll do is?
Yeah.
Pete, if you have a thought, you can go first.
No, I think that's a great way to phrase it because I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to think in terms of characters you could see here. I think like it depends on what the coordination level is, because I know at this point Deborah Chow did Obi-Wan separately. I could see something like that popping up here. Like, I wonder if we get can we see the twins in this show? I mean, we already had Bib Fortuna picking up a Rancor for Jabba.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of who else could pop up here. I'm trying to think of.
Think we get the Power Rangers? The Cyberpunk Power Rangers just show up in Mandalorian?
Well, I mean, they could. I mean, I'm sure my man will have that Tatooine at some point.
I don't know.
I want to know when we see like Roken and Riva and Luthen again. That's what I'm curious about, if ever.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And we'll put that aside here. Let's talk real quick. We'll close up here. We're going to do MVP, LEP on this one. We'll also do some trackers here. So we've got some trackers in the mix for this show. So, Nick, we have to bring the Honda one. It comes on every show.
Yep, we get Hondo involved. We're at 18, right?
Yeah, you got to get him. I think he's got to definitely. I think this is the show where he definitely shows up at either this season or next season.
I'm with you. I think I really do. I really, and I know we use it as a joke on here to, because of basically like 2 years ago now when you didn't like Hondo at first and he grew on you. But we used to put it as a joke as like, oh, we're gonna see a lot of him. But I do think that if he's at Disney World and he's on, I don't know Disneyland. I'll be honest. I don't know if he's there. But if he's at Disney World and you're showing him off, you gotta show him at some point, right?
Yeah, you have to.
So, all jokes aside, we gotta be seeing him soon.
All right. Pete, I think in terms of the cameo, I think we should just do live action only. I feel like it's way too easy to say, oh, here's Gregor from Clone Wars. This thing gets set off to. I think we can track the live action characters originally in live action. I think that's a more meaningful cameo tracker.
I think that's fair. I think that the parallel between this show and Clone Wars is just too close. I feel like we're going to get animated cameos throughout the entire season. So
I think it's more memorable. Like if we see, oh, there's C-3PO. He's not usually in this show. Or like, oh, there's actual Boba Fett. I think that's more important to track.
Sure. Right.
All right, here. Nick, Pride Tracker. I think that's a good idea also.
Definitely.
All right. So here, Pete, this is one I throw about in August here. What about the idea of a Sid mission tracker? We track how many missions Sid is sending these guys on.
Well, I think it's not a bad idea. However, I think that's going to be a litmus test of how the season's going too, right? So if we have 16 episodes and there's 15 missions that the group is sent on, I think we can chalk this season up to be a really bad one, right? I mean, I hate to say it, even though if they're really good episodes, it's like I don't want to see a whole season's worth of Sid missions. So I think it's a good one. I think we use that tracker to compare it against what we wanted the season to be or what we felt like the season should be and see if, maybe we're wrong. Maybe the missions do help it. Maybe it doesn't. So I think that's a good one.
All right. And Nick, last one for sure I want to carry over here is I think the clone tracker. Talk about in August. There's how many different clones they bring to this show because we had a couple last season. We had like 3 extra ones. They had Rex, Gregor, I think the guy who defected from the clone. So like I think
that's a good tracker that kind of fills the void of the animated cameo one.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, it's more specific.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like because we're never going to hit it for sure. Cody and Rex. I mean, we're not counting the main 5 in any capacity.
Yeah.
So, but are you going to count Rex again, even though he showed up in season 1? Like, would that be considered a cameo now?
Well, I mean, we're gonna start fresh on all the trackers except for Hondo. We'll carry Hondo's number over.
Yeah, so like I think what Pete's saying, and I kind of want to know the answer too. I'm not opposed to it if we say yes. I'm not opposed to it if we say no. If Saul Guerrero shows up, is that a cameo? Because he was already in the show.
No, we're going live action cameo.
Well, technically, I guess he technically showed up in the Clone Wars first, but whatever. But my point is, let's say he showed up and he was in the show already. Would he count again?
Yeah, you would count whenever he appears.
I would agree. That's fine. Just because honestly, we make all these trackers, and then at the end of the season, we go, we had one, and then we look like idiots.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to add to this?
I have 2.
Sure.
One, I think we got to put a Bosk tracker on there with the Hondo. Hondo and Bosk right underneath it. And I think another one that would be nice, like a one that might get a lot of numbers that I think would be good is an Omega kill count.
Mega kill count.
It's
Yeah.
fun.
Because it might be a high number, and like usually we look at this, and at the end of the season we go, we had 4. Like it would be fun to actually sit here and go, we had a 54 number. Like that would actually be fun.
Yes, especially because she's got her bow and arrow and she's been practicing with it apparently.
So
Yeah.
I think a cool tracker just to see how this season compares to last is to see how many times the team underestimates her. I'm not trying to be funny with that. I'm curious to see, like, it looks like she's more of part of a team, and I'm just kind of curious to see how many times they're like, you stay here, we need to take care of this kind of a thing. Like, I wonder how many times that's still brought up like it was last season.
So like the amount of times Omega needs a babysitter.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm curious. Like, again, we may get that tone, and that tracker might just die right then and there from episode 1. But I'm just curious. If we have a whole season with them still doing the same stuff with her character, then I don't see much character development there. That's just also something I was just thinking about.
All right, so we'll keep these in the mix here. We'll be back next week. We're going to do the 2-episode premiere. So the plan right now is we're going to do weekly coverage of these episodes. The podcast is probably about this length, maybe like 35 minutes at most. So like. Because Nick, I feel like you kind of got the plot on all of these because they're really pretty much all the same, I feel like.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so that's all for the Bad Batch preview. We'll be back next week. We'll do the premiere. We're going to go through MVPs, LVPs, all these trackers, all that fun stuff here. And Pete, thanks for taking the time to come on. I appreciate it. If you want to follow on social media, how can I do that?
At PJ Consadori 29, retweeting this show, retweeting some Rangers scores, what's going on with them. But other than that, yeah, you can follow me there.
All right. And Nick, people want to follow the Instagram. We have one more time how to do that.
At Sky Guys Podcast on Instagram.com. And next time we're here, when you ask me that, I'm going to ask you right back, Mike, how do we follow the Twitter?
Yeah, well, I can't do it yet. You can follow me on Twitter, though. MPhillips331. It's MPHILIPS331. This week, we're on the Justin the Suffering podcast. Do some college football playoff stuff. We're going to talk also. We have the annual Pop Culture Party 4 podcast here. We're going to talk about all the headlines in the year of pop culture with our team over there, John Stanko, Sam DeRose, are the usual suspects in that category here. And both of them have been on the Sky Guys this year, Pete.
That's always a great lineup. Always a great lineup. Definitely listen to that.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. We'll get some Star Wars takes in them as well, I'm sure, on that podcast. And until then, everybody, may the Force be with you.